power is a fragile illusion. One moment you are the king of New York, swirling a 50-year-old scotch, surrounded by people who fear you. The next, you are on your knees, begging for forgiveness from the person you just humiliated. Sterling Cross, the ruthless CEO of Obsidian Dynamics, thought he was untouchable. He thought the woman serving his champagne was just staff, invisible, disposable, irrelevant. He smirked at her clumsiness, but he didn't check the napkin she slid under his glass. It took exactly 10 seconds for that smirk to curdle into sheer, unadulterated terror, because the waitress wasn't there to serve him a drink. She was there to serve him a life sentence, and the cameras were already rolling. The Pierre Hotel on Fifth Avenue doesn't just smell like money, it smells like old money. It's a scent composed of fresh Lily's floor wax and the metallic tang of heavy jewelry. On this particular Tuesday night in November, the grand ballroom was suffocating under the weight of ego. It was the annual Titans of Industry Gala, a charity event where a single plate of rubbery chicken cost $50,000. Chloe adjusted the collar of her black vest, feeling the stiff fabric dig into her neck. She was exhausted. Her feet, encased in cheap, non-slip shoes from Walmart, throbbed against the marble floor. To the 300 guests in the room, Chloe didn't have a name. She was waitress number 4. She was a pair of hands, holding a tray, a torso, dodging elbows, a ghost in a room full of people obsessed with being seen. Keep the champagne flowing, table 6 is dry. The floor manager, a sweaty man named Mr. Henderson, hissed into her earpiece. And for God's sake, stay away from Sterling Cross unless he flags you. He's in a mood. Chloe's eyes flickered toward table 1. Sterling Cross. Even if you lived under a rock, you knew the face. Sharp, jaw-lined, silver fox hair, perfectly coiffed, and eyes that looked like they were carved out of glacial ice. He was the man who had effectively privatized water distribution in 3 developing countries. He was the man who had shorted the housing market before the last crash, making billions while families lived in their cars. He sat at the head of the table, flanked by his 3rd wife, Isabella, and a senator whose name was constantly in the papers for insider trading scandals. Sterling wasn't eating. He was holding court. He gestured with a crystal tumbler of scotch, laughing at a joke that wasn't funny, while the men around him chuckled nervously. Chloe tightened her grip on the silver tray. Sterling Cross. The name tasted like bile in her throat. For 6 months, Chloe had been working double shifts at this catering company. She had scrubbed dishes, mopped vomit in bathrooms, and endured the sexual harassment of drunk bankers, all for this specific night. She wasn't here for the $20 an hour. She was here because Sterling Cross had destroyed her family, and tonight the statute of limitations on his sins was about to expire. Champagne, miss? A heavy-set man at table 6 barked, snapping his fingers at her like she was a golden retriever. Right away, sir. Chloe said, her voice smooth, professional, robotic. She moved through the crowd with the grace of a dancer. She poured the Dom Perignon without spilling a drop, smiled when they ignored her, and faded into the background when they were done. But her eyes never left table 1. She needed an opening. It happened at 8:42 p.m. The senator stood up to take a call, leaving the seat next to Sterling empty. Sterling turned, signaling for a refill of his water. It was a mundane gesture, a flick of the wrist. Chloe's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. She grabbed a fresh pitcher of ice water and a specific folded linen napkin from her apron pocket. This wasn't the standard hotel napkin. It looked identical, but inside the fold, printed on the fabric in microscopic thermal ink, was a QR code and a single line of text. She walked toward table 1. The noise of the room seemed to dampen, fading into a dull roar. Tunnel vision set in. As she approached, Sterling looked up. He didn't look at her. He looked through her. He saw a uniform, not a human being. "Water," he grunted, not breaking his conversation with Isabella. "And make sure it's actually cold this time." "Of course, Mr. Cross," Chloe said. As she leaned in to pour her hand, slipped. It was a calculated error. She jerked the pitcher just a fraction of an inch. A splash of ice water, no more than a tablespoon, sloshed out of the glass and onto the cuff of Sterling's bespoke Brioni suit jacket. The reaction was instantaneous. Sterling recoiled, as if she had thrown acid on him. The conversation at the table died instantly. The nearby tables went silent. "You incompetent little—" Sterling cut himself off, grabbing a dry cloth from the table to dab at the water. He looked up at her, then really looked at her. And that's when it happened. The smirk. It wasn't a smile of forgiveness. It was a sneer of absolute superiority. It was the look a wolf gives a wounded rabbit. He looked at her cheap shoes, her messy bun, her terrified expression. He enjoyed her fear. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" Sterling asked, his voice low, but carrying across the silent room. "It costs more than you will earn in your entire life." Chloe lowered her head. "I am so sorry, sir. I slipped." "You slipped?" Sterling repeated, letting out a dry chuckle. He looked around at his guests, inviting them to join in the mockery. They let anyone in these days. No standards. Tell me, do you even know how to read, or do you just follow pictures? The table laughed. Isabella covered her mouth, giggling. "I can read, sir," Chloe whispered. "Good," Sterling said, leaning back, the smirk deepening. "Then read the room and get out of my sight. You're fired. I'll have your manager escort you out before you drown the senator." He dismissed her with a wave of his hand, turning his back to her. It was the ultimate humiliation. Public, brutal, and efficient. But Chloe didn't leave. She stood there freezing the moment. This was the friction she needed. The eyes of the room were on them. "I'll leave Mr. Cross," Chloe said, her voice suddenly losing its tremble. It became hard, clear, and loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "But first you need to clean up your mess." Sterling froze. He turned back around slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Excuse me." Chloe reached out and placed the folded napkin on the table directly under his nose. She didn't slam it. She placed it with the delicacy of a bomb disposal expert. "You missed a spot," she said. Sterling looked at the napkin. He saw the text. "Blackwood Holdings, Cayman Islands, account number 8842. The wire transfer from my father, Daniel Moore, is dated today, 20 years ago." Sterling Cross stopped breathing. The smirk didn't just fade. It evaporated, replaced by a pallor that made him look like a corpse. His eyes shot up to Chloe's face. He searched her features, looking past the waitress uniform, stripping away the years. He saw the eyes. He saw Daniel Moore's eyes, staring back at him from the face of a waitress he had just humiliated. The silence that followed lasted exactly 10 seconds. 1. Sterling read the note again. 2. His hand began to tremble, rattling the ice in his glass. 3. He looked at the senator who was returning to the table. 4. He realized the senator was the head of the ethics committee. 5. He looked back at Chloe. 6. Chloe tapped the napkin with her index finger. 7. Sterling realized everyone was watching. 8. He stood up his chair, scraping violently against the floor. 9. He opened his mouth. 10. I'm sorry," Sterling stammered. The room gasped. Sterling Cross never apologized. "I didn't hear you," Chloe said, crossing her arms. "I apologize," Sterling said louder, his voice cracking. He wasn't looking at her like a waitress anymore. He was looking at her like she was the executioner. "Please, Sit down. We need to talk. I don't think so, Chloe said, taking a step back. I think I'm fired. Remember, the atmosphere in the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel shifted from awkward tension to bewildered chaos. A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones were raised. The elite of New York City smelled blood in the water, and for the first time in decades, it was the blood of Sterling Cross. Sterling looked frantic. He reached out as if to grab Chloe's arm but stopped himself. Touching her now would be suicide. Please, Sterling hissed, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Chloe. Is it Chloe, or is it... It's Chloe, she said coldly. Though you knew me as the liability in your emails to your lawyers, didn't you? Isabella pulled at Sterling's sleeve. Sterling, what is going on? Who is this girl? Why are you apologizing to the help? Shut up, Isabella. Sterling snapped, not looking at her. He was fixated on the napkin. He snatched it up, crumpling it in his fist, trying to hide the evidence. But Chloe had planned for this. Don't bother, she said, her voice calm amidst the rising storm. That's just a copy. The original ledger, the one you thought you burned in the warehouse fire in 2004. It's with the district attorney. They received it 5 minutes ago, the moment I walked up to this table. This was a bluff, a dangerous high-stakes bluff. Chloe had sent the files to a journalist at the New York Times, not the DA yet. She needed Sterling to panic. She needed him to make a mistake. Sterling's face went from pale to a flushed, angry red. He was cornered. You little witch, he snarled, stepping closer, invading her personal space. The mask of the polite billionaire slipped. Do you have any idea who you are dealing with? I buried your father. I can bury you. Are you threatening me, Mr. Cross? Chloe asked loudly, turning toward the nearest camera phone held by a young socialite. Did everyone hear that Sterling Cross just threatened to bury me like he buried my father, Daniel Moore? The name Daniel Moore hit the room like a physical blow. 20 years ago, Daniel Moore had been Sterling's partner. He had committed suicide after being accused of embezzling millions from the pension fund of the Outcome Workers Union. It was a massive scandal. Sterling had played the grieving friend, the hero who stepped in to save the company. But the truth Chloe had spent 10 years uncovering was that Sterling had framed him. He had siphoned the money to offshore accounts, planted the evidence on Daniel, and driven an honest man to his grave. Security! Sterling roared, waving his arms. Get this woman out of here. She's deranged. She's attacking me. Mr. Henderson, the floor manager, came sprinting over, accompanied by 2 large security guards. Grab her, Sterling commanded. Don't touch me, Chloe said, holding up a hand. She reached into her apron and pulled out not a weapon, but a laminated ID card. She wore it around her neck, tucked under her vest. She flipped it over. It wasn't a hotel staff ID. I'm not just a waitress, Mr. Cross, she said. I'm a private investigator licensed by the state of New York, and I'm currently wearing a wire. She tapped the top button of her vest. Sterling froze. The security guards hesitated. They looked from the billionaire to the waitress, unsure of who held the real power. You're lying, Sterling whispered. Am I? Chloe smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. Say something incriminating, Sterling. Let's find out. The ballroom was dead silent. You could hear the ice melting in the glasses. Suddenly, a slow clap broke the silence. Everyone turned. Walking toward table 1 was a man who hadn't been on the guest list. He was wearing a trench coat over a suit that had seen better days. He looked tired, unshaven, and dangerous. It was Detective Miller from the NYPD Financial Crimes Division. I wouldn't kick her out if I were you, Sterling, Miller said, his voice gravelly. He walked right up to the table and took a sip of the senator's abandoned wine. Because if she leaves, I have to arrest you right now. But if she stays, maybe we can discuss a surrender." Sterling looked at Miller, then at Chloe. He realized the trap had been set long before tonight. The smirk at the waitress hadn't been the start of the incident. It had been the trigger for the execution. "My office," Sterling said through gritted teeth. "Now, private room." "No private rooms," Chloe said firmly. "We do this here, in front of your investors, in front of the press. You want a show?" Sterling straightened his jacket, regaining a sliver of his composure. The shark was back. "Fine. You want to talk about your father? Let's talk about him. Let's talk about why he really died. Because it wasn't the embezzlement, Chloe. And you know it." Chloe frowned. A flicker of doubt crossed her face. "You're lying." "Am I?" Sterling leaned in his voice, silky and cruel. "Did you ever check the autopsy report closely? The toxicology screen. Your father didn't kill himself because of the money. He killed himself because he found out what you did." Chloe took a step back. "What I did, I was 7 years old. Exactly," Sterling said, the smirk returning, weaker but present. "And 7-year-olds see things they shouldn't. You want the truth. The truth isn't on a napkin. The truth is in a safe deposit box in Zurich. And I'm the only one with the key." He looked at the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. This young woman is clearly distressed and mentally unstable. I am trying to help her." He was spinning the narrative. In real time. He was gaslighting the entire room. "He's lying!" Chloe shouted. But the crowd was swaying. Sterling was powerful, he was charming, and Chloe looked like a tired waitress. "Show them the wire transfer," Chloe yelled at Detective Miller. Miller reached into his pocket. But he didn't pull out a warrant. He pulled out a phone and checked a text message. He looked at Chloe, his eyes sad. "I can't, Chloe," Miller said softly. "What?" Chloe stared at him. "Why?" "The judge just denied the warrant," Miller said, looking at Sterling. "Someone got to him 5 minutes ago." Sterling chuckled. He took a sip of his scotch. "Like I said, power." Chloe felt the floor drop out from under her. She had played her ace, and Sterling had simply bought the casino. She was standing alone in the middle of the ballroom, the billionaire smirking at her again. "Escort her out," Sterling said to the guards, bored now. As the guards grabbed Chloe's arms, she didn't struggle. She locked eyes with Sterling. "You think you won," she whispered. "I know I did," Sterling replied. "Then why?" Chloe asked, nodding toward the entrance of the ballroom. "Is she here?" Sterling turned to look at the massive double doors. They swung open with a bang. Standing there, framed by the light of the hallway, was a woman in a wheelchair. She was frail, elderly, and hooked up to an oxygen tank. But Sterling recognized her instantly. It was his mother, the woman he had legally declared dead 10 years ago to claim her trust fund. And pushing the wheelchair was not a nurse, it was the senator's wife. Sterling dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, shards of crystal exploding everywhere. Chloe smiled. "I didn't just bring a napkin, Sterling. I brought the whole family reunion." The silence in the grand ballroom was different this time. Before it had been the silence of awkwardness, of people trying to look away from a car crash. Now it was the silence of a crypt being pried open. Sterling Cross stood amidst the shards of his broken glass, his Brioni suit now stained with scotch and water, his face a mask of uncomprehending horror. He looked at the woman in the wheelchair, then at the senator's wife, pushing her, and finally at Chloe. "Mother," he whispered. The word sounded foreign in his mouth, rusty from disuse. The old woman, Martha Cross, lifted her head. She was skeletal, her skin like parchment paper, draped over brittle bone. But her eyes, those glacial, piercing eyes, were identical to her son's. They were eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "Hello, Sterling," Martha rasped. Her voice was weak, amplified only by the sheer stillness of the room. "You look expensive. This is impossible." Sterling said, his voice rising, panic cracking the smooth veneer of his baritone. He looked wildly at the crowd at the cameras that were now streaming live to millions. "This is a trick A deep fake. My mother died in 2013. We had a funeral. The mayor attended. I remember the funeral," Martha said, a dry, wheezing cough shaking her small frame. "I watched it on the television in the basement of that facility you put me in. Nice flowers. I always hated lilies." The crowd erupted. The murmur turned into a roar. "Alive! He faked her death. The trust fund." The accusations flew like shrapnel. Eleanor, the senator's wife, stepped around the wheelchair. She was a woman of steel and pearls, known for her charity luncheons and her ability to smile while cutting a rival dead socially. Tonight, she wasn't smiling. "It wasn't a facility, Sterling," Eleanor announced, her voice projecting to the back of the room. "It was a holding cell, a dreary, unlicensed nursing home in New Jersey, paid to keep her off the grid. No visitors, no phone calls, just a check every month from a shell company to keep Patient X sedated." Sterling turned on the senator, who was still sitting at the table, looking as if he wished he could dissolve into the upholstery. "You knew about this," Sterling screamed at the senator. "Your wife is dragging a senile old woman into a gala to sabotage me, and you sit there." The senator, a man named Robert Halloway, stood up slowly. He looked at his wife, then at Sterling. He saw the way the wind was blowing. He saw the cameras. "I had no idea," Senator Halloway lied smoothly. "If these allegations are true, Sterling, this is monstrous." "You snake!" Sterling lunged, but Detective Miller stepped in his hand, heavy on Sterling's chest, shoving him back. "Easy, Tiger," Miller growled. "Let the lady speak." Chloe stepped forward, joining the triangle of power, the waitress, the mother, and the betrayed wife. "Tell them why, Sterling," Chloe demanded. "Tell them why you needed her dead." Sterling straightened his tie. He was hyperventilating, his mind racing at 1,000 miles an hour. He needed a narrative. He needed a lifeboat. "She has dementia," Sterling shouted, pointing a shaking finger at his mother. "Severe paranoia. She threatened to burn down the house. She attacked the staff. I had to protect her. I had to protect the company's reputation from her madness. I didn't steal her money. I put it in a trust to care for her." "Liar," Martha said. It was soft, but it cut through his shouting. She reached into the blanket covering her lap and pulled out a small leather-bound book. It was battered, held together by rubber bands. A diary. "I wasn't crazy, Sterling. I was careful," Martha said. "I knew you were cooking the books. I knew you were laundering money for the cartels through the water privatization deals in Bolivia. I told you I was going to the FBI." She tapped the book. "So you decided I was dead. You forged the death certificate. You paid off the coroner, Dr. Aris, wasn't it? And you locked me away." Sterling looked at the diary. He recognized it. He had spent weeks tearing his father's study apart, looking for that book 20 years ago. "That's inadmissible," Sterling sneered, trying to regain ground. The ramblings of a confused old woman. "It's not just ramblings," Chloe interjected. "Inside the back cover of that diary is a micro SD card. We already cracked the encryption, Sterling. It contains audio recordings of you and my father, Daniel Moore." Sterling froze. You said my father killed himself because he discovered my crimes. Chloe's voice shook with suppressed rage. You said I was the reason. She turned to the projectionist booth at the back of the ballroom. She raised her hand. Play track 4, Chloe commanded. The room went dark as the lights dimmed, leaving only the spotlight on Sterling. A screech of audio feedback whined through the speakers, followed by the hiss of a tape recording, digitized and amplified. Voice 1, unmistakably a younger Sterling Cross. Daniel, be reasonable. It's $50 million. We just need to route it through the Cayman account for a week. The pension fund won't even notice it's gone. Voice 2. Daniel Moore, Chloe's father. I can't do it, Sterling. These are people's retirements. It's their lives. If you do this, I'm going to the board. I'm going to the police. Voice 1, Sterling. You're not going anywhere, Dan. Think about Chloe. She's... what, 7 now? Cute kid. Shame if she grew up without a father, or worse. Shame if everyone thought her father was a thief. Voice 2. Daniel, are you threatening my daughter? Voice 1, Sterling. I'm telling you how the world works. You take the fall, or I take everything you love. Sign the confession, Daniel, or I'll make sure Chloe pays the price for the rest of her life. The recording clicked off. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It was heavy, physical, suffocating. Chloe stood with tears streaming down her face. For 20 years she had lived with the shadow of doubt. Had her father really stolen the money? Had he been weak, the recording washed her clean. It was vindication. Sterling stood alone in the spotlight. There was no spinning this. No lawyer could talk this away. His voice, threatening a 7-year-old child, echoed in the minds of everyone in the room. He looked at Isabella, his wife. She was backing away from him, disgust written on her perfectly made-up face. She took off her massive diamond ring, a ring bought with blood money, and dropped it into a champagne glass on a passing waiter's tray. I'm calling my lawyer, Isabella said, her voice carrying in the quiet. I want a divorce, and I want immunity. Sterling laughed. It was a broken, jagged sound. Immunity, he cackled. He looked around the room, his eyes wild. The facade of the billionaire was gone. The feral animal beneath was exposed. None of you are immune. You think I did this alone? He spun around, pointing at the crowd. He pointed at a tech CEO. I funded your startup with laundered money. You knew. And you. He pointed at a famous actress. Who do you think paid for your hush money scandal in 2018? He turned to the senator. And you, Robert, don't look so pious. Half of your campaign war chest came from the very accounts you're pretending to be shocked by. Chaos erupted. People began shouting, denying, pushing toward the exits. The titans of industry were turning on each other like rats in a barrel. Arrest him! Senator Holloway screamed, his face purple. Get him out of here. Detective Miller stepped forward, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. Sterling Cross, you are under arrest for fraud, kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. Sterling didn't run. He didn't fight. He just stood there, looking at Chloe. You think this is over, Sterling whispered, as Miller clicked the cuffs onto his wrists. You think you've won? You just kicked the hornet's nest, little girl. I was the only thing keeping the real monsters at bay. I'll take my chances, Chloe said. We'll see. Sterling smirked. Even in handcuffs, the smirk returned. Check your phone, Chloe. Chloe frowned. She pulled her phone from her apron pocket. A notification, a live stream alert. She clicked it. The screen showed her apartment, her tiny rundown apartment in Queens. The door was kicked in, the place was ransacked, and sitting on her bed, holding a lighter to her curtains, was a man in a black mask. I have insurance policies, Sterling whispered, leaning into her ear as Miller dragged him away. "Let me go, or everything you have left burns." The police cars flashed red and blue against the facade of the Pierre Hotel, a chaotic strobe light show for the hundreds of paparazzi gathering outside. Sterling Cross was shoved into the back of a squad car, his head pushed down by Detective Miller. But as the car pulled away, Chloe wasn't celebrating. She was standing on the curb, staring at her phone screen. On the video feed, the masked man in her apartment wasn't just burning her curtains. He was holding up a picture, a framed photograph of her and her younger sister Emily. Chloe's blood ran cold. Emily was supposed to be safe. She was away at college in Vermont, 3 states away. Chloe had kept her distance for years, specifically to keep Emily off Sterling's radar. The masked man turned the photo over. On the back, written in thick marker, were the words, "The dorm room, 11 o'clock p.m. Chloe checked her watch. It was 10:15 p.m. "Miller!" Chloe screamed, banging on the window of the departing police car before it could merge into traffic. Miller slammed on the brakes. He rolled down the window. "What is it?" "We have him, Chloe. It's done." "It's not done," Chloe panted, shoving the phone in his face. "He has people going after my sister, in Vermont. We have 45 minutes. Miller swore loudly. He looked back at Sterling, who was sitting in the caged back seat, looking calm, almost bored. "Call the Staties," Miller barked at his partner in the driver's seat. "Get a unit to University of Vermont dorms." "Which one?" "North Complex," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "Room 304. "Oh, go!" Miller yelled. As the partner radioed ahead, Miller looked at Chloe. "Get in." "What?" "Get in the front. We need to leverage him. He won't talk to me. He might talk to you if he thinks he can make a deal." Chloe didn't hesitate. She jumped into the front passenger seat of the cruiser. The siren wailed, and they tore down Fifth Avenue, weaving through traffic. In the rearview mirror, Chloe locked eyes with Sterling. "Call them off," she demanded. "Quid pro quo, Chloe," Sterling said smoothly. "I make a phone call and your sister finishes her semester. You lose the evidence. And I walk." "You're already in custody," Chloe shouted. "The world knows your mother is alive. The recording is out." "The recording is inadmissible," Sterling countered. "Illegal wiretap. And my mother, a tragic case of administrative error and a senile woman's confusion. My lawyers will have me out on bail by morning. But your sister, fire moves fast in old dorm buildings." Chloe felt a primal urge to reach through the cage and throttle him, but she knew he was right about one thing: he had power she couldn't comprehend. Even in chains, he was dangerous. "Why?" Chloe asked, her voice breaking. "Why are you doing this? You have billions. You won. Why destroy my family?" Sterling's expression shifted. The smirk vanished, replaced by a cold, hard look of genuine annoyance. "Because your father was weak," Sterling said. "And poverty is a disease. I tried to cure him. I gave him a chance to be rich, to be powerful. He chose ethics. He chose to stay small. I despise small people, Chloe. And you, a waitress, you are the smallest of them all." "I took you down," Chloe said. "You inconvenienced me," Sterling corrected. Suddenly the police radio crackled. "Dispatch to Unit 4 Alpha. Vermont State Police are on scene at UVM. Negative contact at room 304. Room is empty. Signs of struggle." Chloe stopped breathing. "Where is she?" Chloe screamed, turning around in her seat to face him. Sterling checked his imaginary watch on his cuffed wrist. "Hard to say. My associates are very efficient, but I imagine she's in a trunk by now. Probably heading toward the Canadian border." Miller slammed his fist on the dashboard. "That's kidnapping across state lines, Sterling. That's FBI jurisdiction. You're digging your own grave." "I'm negotiating my release," Sterling said calmly. "Here is the deal. You pull over, you let me out, I walk into the subway station and disappear. Once I am safe, I text you the location of the girl. If you don't, well, I hope she likes the cold." The car went silent. The siren wailed outside, a lonely, desperate sound. Miller looked at Chloe. He was a good cop, but he was bound by the law. He couldn't just let a billionaire fugitive go. But he also saw the look in Chloe's eyes. It was the look of a woman who had nothing left to lose. "Don't do it, Miller," Chloe said quietly. Miller looked at her, shocked. "Chloe, it's your sister." "He's lying," Chloe said, her voice hardening. She was staring at Sterling with an intensity that made the billionaire blink. "Excuse me," Sterling said. "You're lying," Chloe repeated. "You don't have her." "Is that a risk you want to take?" Sterling sneered. "Yes," Chloe said, "because my sister isn't in Vermont." Sterling's brow furrowed. "What? She dropped out 3 weeks ago." Chloe said, a slow, dark smile spreading across her face. "I moved her. She's in a safe house, in Ohio." "The dorm room. It's been empty for a month. You sent your goons to an empty room." Sterling's face went slack. For the first time all night, genuine fear flickered in his eyes. "But the radio," Sterling stammered. "Signs of struggle," Chloe laughed. "My sister was messy. She left the place a wreck. And the police found an empty room because it is an empty room." Chloe leaned back against the seat, the adrenaline crash hitting her, but the victory tasting sweet. "You bluffed," Sterling whispered. "I learned from the best," Chloe said. "You were so busy watching me, you forgot to check if the pawn was actually on the square." Miller let out a loud, barking laugh. "You hear that, Sterling? You got played. Again." Sterling slumped back in the seat. The fight went out of him. The titan of industry looked small, deflated and pathetic. But just as the police cruiser turned toward the precinct, a heavy black SUV swerved out of a side street and slammed into the side of the police car. Crash! The world spun. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. The cruiser spun across the wet pavement, slamming into a lamppost. Airbags deployed with a punch of white powder. Chloe gasped for air, her vision swimming. She looked over. Miller was unconscious, blood trickling from his forehead. The back door of the cruiser was ripped open. 2 men in tactical gear wearing balaclavas dragged a dazed Sterling out of the wreckage. "Get him in the truck," one shouted. Sterling looked back at the car at Chloe, who was struggling to unbuckle her seatbelt. He didn't look relieved to be rescued. He looked terrified. "No!" Sterling yelled at his rescuers. "Not you! Anyone but you! Shut up, Cross!" one of the men said, pistol-whipping him. "The chairman is very disappointed in you." They threw Sterling into the black SUV. Chloe managed to kick her door open. She stumbled out onto the street, broken glass crunching under her Waitress shoes. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice weak. The rear window of the SUV rolled down as it peeled away. A man sat there. He wasn't wearing a mask. He was older than Sterling, with silver hair and a face that looked like it was carved from granite. It was the senator. Senator Holloway. He looked at Chloe, raised a single finger to his lips in a shh gesture, and the SUV sped off into the New York night. Chloe stood alone in the wreckage. The sirens were getting louder, approaching from all directions. She had exposed Sterling Cross. She had saved her father's reputation. She had found the mother. But she had just discovered that Sterling wasn't the disease. He was just a symptom. The real rot went much, much deeper. And now they had her face. Rain began to fall on the wreckage of the police cruiser, mixing with the steam rising from the crushed radiator. It was a cold, biting rain, typical for New York in November. Chloe sat on the curb, shivering, wrapped in a shock blanket a paramedic had thrown over her shoulders. The scene was a flurry of activity: ambulances, fire trucks, and more police cars. But Chloe noticed something disturbing. The officers arriving on the scene weren't asking the right questions. They were focused on the accident. They were asking if Miller had been drinking. They were ignoring Chloe's frantic statements about the black SUV and the kidnapping of a prisoner. "Miss Eyre," a uniformed officer said, his tone dismissive. "You hit your head. You're confused. Detective Miller swerved to avoid a pedestrian. That's what the witnesses said." "What witnesses?" Chloe demanded, standing up, the blanket slipping. "There was no pedestrian. It was a hit and run. It was Senator Holloway." The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "We're going to need you to come to the hospital, Miss Moore. You're hysterical." Chloe backed away. She knew that look. It was the same look Sterling Cross had given the waiter right before he destroyed him. Containment. "I'm fine," Chloe lied, her head throbbing. "I'm going home." "We really insist." The officer reached for her arm. Chloe didn't wait. She turned and ran. She ducked under the yellow police tape, sprinting into the dark alleyway adjacent to the crash site. She didn't stop running until she was 4 blocks away, huddled in the doorway of a closed bodega. She pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. She had 3 missed calls from an unknown number. It rang again. Chloe hesitated, then answered. "Who is this? They're going to kill me, Chloe!" The voice was ragged, breathless. It was Sterling Cross. "Sterling?" Chloe whispered. "Where are you? The senator took you." "Holloway! He's just the face!" Sterling wheezed. "He's taking me to the shipyard, the Red Hook terminal. They're going to put me in a container and drop me in the Atlantic. I know how they work. I helped write the playbook." "Why are you calling me?" Chloe asked, anger flaring. "You threatened my sister, and you outsmarted me," Sterling said. There was a strange sound in the background, metal grinding on metal. "Listen to me. You want justice for your father. You think exposing me was the end. Holloway is the one who ordered the hit on Daniel. I was just the executioner. Holloway ran the accounts." Chloe froze. "You said you framed him." "I did," Sterling yelled, his voice cracking. "But Holloway gave the order. If I die tonight, the trail ends with me. Holloway walks. He becomes the next governor. And you become a loose end. They won't let you live, Chloe. Not now that you've seen Holloway's face." Chloe looked at the rain-slicked street. She hated him. She hated him with every fiber of her being. But he was right. If Sterling died, the truth died. "Where are you exactly?" Chloe asked. "I managed to slip my cuffs. I jumped from the SUV when they slowed down for the toll booth. I'm hiding in a maintenance shed near the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel entrance. But they're hunting me. I have maybe 10 minutes. "Stay put," Chloe said. "I'm coming." "Chloe," Sterling said, his voice dropping. "Bring a gun." "I don't have a gun," Chloe snapped. "I'm a waitress." "Then bring your brain," Sterling said. "It seems to be sharper than mine." Chloe hung up. She looked at her reflection in the bodega window. Messy bun, stained, vest, bruised, cheek. She didn't look like a hero. She looked like a victim. She reached into her bag and pulled out the only weapon she had left, the tablet she used for her PI work, containing the encrypted back door to the Pierre Hotel's security system, and a taser she carried for late-night shifts. She hailed a cab. "Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Drive fast." The ride was a blur of neon lights and anxiety. When the cab dropped her off near the tunnel entrance, the area was deserted. The hum of the ventilation fans was deafening. She spotted the maintenance shed Sterling had mentioned. It was a corrugated metal shack surrounded by a chain-link fence. The gate was open. Chloe crept forward, the taser gripping tightly in her hand. She stepped into the shed. "Sterling," she whispered. A hand clamped over her mouth. She spun around, taser raised, but Sterling caught her wrist. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was shredded. His face was bloody. One eye was swollen shut. The billionaire was gone. Only a desperate man remained. "Quiet!" Sterling hissed. "They're outside." Chloe listened. She heard heavy footsteps crunching on gravel. Low voices. "Check the perimeter," a voice commanded. It was the man who had pistol-whipped Sterling earlier. "What do we do?" Chloe whispered. "We need to get to my office," Sterling said. "Your office?" "The police are swarming it," Chloe said. "Not the Obsidian Tower." Sterling shook his head. "My real office, the one nobody knows about. It's in a storage unit in Queens. I have a server there, a backup of the backup. It has the senator's entire ledger. If we can upload that to the cloud, Holloway is finished." "How do we get out of here?" Chloe asked. Sterling looked at a beat-up maintenance truck parked in the corner of the shed. "Can you drive a stick shift?" Chloe smirked. "I drove a delivery truck for 2 years." "Get in." They scrambled into the truck. Chloe hot-wired it, a skill she'd picked up during a particularly nasty repo job a few years back. The engine roared to life. The shed door flew open. 2 men with silencers on their pistols stood there. "Get down!" Chloe screamed. She slammed the truck into reverse. The heavy rear bumper smashed through the shed wall, sending corrugated metal flying. The gunman opened fire. Thwip, thwip, thwip. Bullets pinged off the chassis. Chloe spun the wheel shifting into first. She gunned it, driving straight at the gunman. They dove out of the way. The truck tore out of the compound tires, screeching. They merged onto the highway, leaving the hitmen behind. Sterling sat in the passenger seat, panting, clutching his ribs. He looked at Chloe with a mixture of shock and grudging respect. "Who are you really, Chloe Moore?" he asked. "I told you," Chloe said, eyes on the road. "I'm the person who cleans up the mess." The storage unit in Queens was indistinguishable from the thousands of others in the sprawling complex, a rusted orange door number 404. But inside, it was a fortress. Sterling punched in a code, scanned his retina, and the door hissed open. Inside was a climate-controlled server room, humming with blue light. There were banks of hard drives, a single desk, and a wall of monitors. "Welcome to the black box," Sterling said, limping toward the desk. He sat down and began typing furiously. "Holloway thinks he's smart. He used my accounts to move the money, but he didn't realize I programmed a mirrored transaction protocol. Every cent he stole, I logged." Chloe watched the screens. Numbers scrolled by faster than she could read. Billions of dollars. Pensions, infrastructure grants, foreign aid, all siphoned into shell companies owned by the Olympus Group. "The Olympus Group," Chloe read aloud. "That's Holloway. Holloway the mayor, 2 judges, and the CEO of a major defense contractor," Sterling explained. "They aren't just stealing money, Chloe. They're shorting the city. They defund the subway, the stock drops. They buy the infrastructure for pennies, then they get the government contracts to fix it. It's a perpetual money machine built on the suffering of New Yorkers." "And you helped them," Chloe said, her voice cold. Sterling stopped typing. He looked at his hands. "I did. I wanted a seat at the table. I thought if I had enough money I'd be safe. I'd be untouchable." He looked up at her. "I was wrong. There is always a bigger fish." "Sterling, look." Chloe pointed at one of the monitors. It was a news feed. "Breaking news. Manhunt for killer billionaire and accomplice." The screen showed a photo of Sterling, and next to it, a photo of Chloe. The reporter's voice. "Police are searching for Sterling Cross, who escaped custody tonight, and Chloe Moore, a disgruntled former employee, who is believed to be aiding him. Authorities warn that Moore is armed and dangerous. Sources say the pair may be responsible for the attack on Detective Miller." They flipped the narrative. Chloe whispered, horrified. They're blaming me for Miller. Of course they are, Sterling said grimly. Holloway controls the narrative. If the police find us, they won't arrest us. They'll shoot on sight. Armed and dangerous is code for execute with impunity. We can't upload the data, Chloe realized. If we dump this on the internet, they'll just say it's fake. They'll say we doctored it. We need to broadcast it. Live. Somewhere they can't cut the feed. Sterling's eyes lit up. The morning show. What? The National Morning Show. Their studio is in Times Square. It's a glass box, visible from the street. They go live at 7 a.m. That's... He checked the clock. In 4 hours. We can't just walk into Times Square, Chloe argued. We're the most wanted people in the city. We don't walk in, Sterling said. We break in. He pulled up a schematic of a building on the screen. I own the building next to the studio, Sterling said. There's a maintenance bridge on the 30th floor connecting the two towers. It's rigged with alarms, but I have the master override. And once we're in, Chloe asked. We take the stage, Sterling said. We hijack the interview. I give the drive to the anchor Sarah Jenkins. She's the only journalist Holloway hasn't bought. She hates me. She'll love this story. It was a suicide mission. Chloe knew it. Sterling knew it. Why are you doing this? Chloe asked again. You could run. With your skills, you could disappear. Sterling stood up. He walked over to a small safe in the corner, opened it, and pulled out a fresh shirt. He tossed it to Chloe. Put this on. That vest makes you a target. He paused, looking at the server banks. When I looked at you tonight in the ballroom, when you put that napkin down, I felt fear. Real fear. I haven't felt that in 20 years. It woke me up, Chloe. My mother is alive because of you. My life is over either way. I can die a thief in a ditch, or I can die the man my father wanted me to be. He held out a hand. Partners? Chloe looked at the hand that had signed the orders to ruin her father. She didn't shake it. We're not partners, Sterling, she said. We're co-belligerents. Let's go take down a senator. At 7 o'clock, a.m. Times Square was waking up, but inside the glass-walled studio of the National Morning Show, Senator Holloway was already spinning his web. He sat comfortably across from anchor Sarah Jenkins, smiling like a benevolent grandfather as he promoted his new anti-corruption bill. Transparency is the cornerstone of democracy, Holloway lied smoothly to the cameras. 30 feet above him, balanced on a lighting rig, Sterling cross-checked the makeshift harness around his waist. He looked at Chloe, whose waitress uniform was torn and stained with grease. She nodded. On 3, Sterling whispered. They didn't just interrupt the broadcast, they detonated it. Swinging down on high tensile cables, they smashed through the decorative glass ceiling panels, raining shards onto the set. They landed hard on the anchor desk, sending mugs and papers flying. The studio erupted. Holloway scrambled back, his face draining of color. Security terrorists, shoot them! Armed guards rushed, the stage weapons drawn. Don't shoot! Sarah Jenkins screamed, realizing the scoop of the century had just landed in her lap. She blocked the guard's line of sight. We are live, keep the cameras rolling. Sterling grabbed the lapel mic, his voice booming through millions of televisions. My name is Sterling Cross. I am a fugitive. But I am not the villain of this story. Chloe slammed the hard drives onto the desk. This is the Olympus ledger. Every bribe, every stolen pension fund, every offshore account. Senator Holloway isn't fighting corruption. He is the corruption. Holloway lunged at Chloe, abandoning his politician persona for pure, violent desperation. Lies cut the feed. Sterling tackled him. It was a messy, brutal brawl on live TV, the billionaire and the senator rolling amidst the broken glass. Sterling pinned Holloway down, blood dripping from his brow, and pulled out his phone. "You want the truth?" Sterling panted into the camera. "Listen." He hit play. Holloway's voice recorded just hours ago. In the SUV filled the studio. "Dump him in the Atlantic. Make sure the girl is dead too. We can't have loose ends before the election." The silence that followed was absolute. Holloway went limp. Seconds later, the studio doors burst open. It wasn't security. It was Detective Miller and a SWAT team. Miller marched onto the set, blood still drying on his forehead from the car crash. He walked past Sterling and hauled the senator to his feet. "Robert Holloway," Miller said, snapping the cuffs on. "You have the right to remain silent." As the crowd outside banged on the glass in cheers, Miller turned to Sterling. The billionaire held out his hands, wrists together, ready for the cuffs. "Did we get him?" Sterling asked softly. Chloe looked at the scrolling news ticker on the monitors. "Senator arrested. Live on air." "We got him," she said. The fallout was swift. Holloway received 3 life sentences. Sterling Cross pleaded guilty to fraud, but in a final act of redemption, he liquidated his entire fortune to repay the families he had hurt. He was sentenced to 20 years. 3 months later, Chloe sat in a small office in Queens. The sign on the door read, "More investigations." She wasn't serving drinks anymore. She was serving justice. And in her pocket, she kept a letter from prison. It was a thank you note from Sterling, signed simply, "To the waitress who didn't just serve me a drink, but served me a life." And that is how a single smirk cost a billionaire his empire, and how a waitress brought down a government. Sterling Cross paid the price for his arrogance, but in losing everything, he found the one thing he never had: his humanity. And Chloe. She proved that no matter how small you think you are, if you have the truth on your side, you can topple giants. What do you think? Did Sterling deserve a lighter sentence for helping Chloe in the end? Or was it too little, too late? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, betrayal, and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. We post new real-life dramas every week. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful who you smirk at. You never know who they really are.